All right. All right. So welcome all to the one of the breakout sessions for 11:30 a.m. And it's titled Nah, I'm gonna start a CTI fight. And our presenter this morning is John Stoner. He has over 21 years of experience in intelligence and national security community, and he has been a contributor for Nova B-Sides from the very first conference, I guess back in 2017, and he has working right with cyber threat intelligence analyst, and has experience with sign INT instructional design and cyber counterintelligence, among many other skill areas. So, without further ado, I'm gonna pass the control to John Stoner. Enjoy the conference.
All right, hi everybody. So this is I'm going to start a fight for CTI. So just like everything else in cybersecurity, nobody agrees on everything. So I'm assuming people will be from the CTI world watching this and disagree with some things. So we've already gone over my who is. I will only mention that I am not John Stoner from Splunk. That is someone else. I coach soccer. Go Liverpool. All right, so CTI, if you are watching this talk and you're not in CTI, I at least wanted to provide a little bit of a background of what cyber threat intelligence is. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with CTI, work in the field. So you will probably also have thoughts about how I talk about CTI. So we're really talking about threats, cyber threat actors, mitigating cyber attacks, mitigating incidents in cyberspace. CTI generally is going to inform the defenders of networks about threats, possibly inform them about vulnerabilities. And cyber threat intelligence sources of information can include OSINT, open source, social media. It could include human intelligence, various forms of technical intelligence, indicators of compromise, hashes, observables, threat actor TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. But to some extent, it's all relative because it depends where you do cyber threat intelligence. I normally have at least three major buckets of where you will find people doing cyber threat intelligence. One bucket is sort of federal government, specifically in the Department of Defense. So like Cyber Command or one of the other intelligence agencies or one of the other federal cyber centers. And there's going to be some differences between what those CTI analysts might do and focus on versus if you're doing cyber threat intelligence at, say, like a very large company, right? Like some Fortune 50 company like CVS or Cisco or BP versus what you do for cyber threat intelligence analysis if you are a cyber threat intelligence vendor, right? So all of those people will perform a lot of the same skills, generally speaking, but the day-to-day minutia of those roles may change. For instance, a lot of people in cyber threat intelligence in the communities I'm most familiar with inside DoD are performing cyber threat intelligence for intelligence purposes in furtherance of some further intelligence goal or priority intelligence requirement, or in furtherance of an operation. It could be a cyber operation, it could be a law enforcement operation, it could be a counterintelligence operation, right? Nobody at CVS, hopefully, is performing advanced cyber counterintelligence operations on threat actors. It's generally not something that private companies do in the United States, right? So the point of cyber threat intelligence at those companies is to inform the defenders and mitigate risk, generally speaking. So that's my first, you can go get the pitchforks ready. So you're a rock star, right? We got all these skills. We got all my rock moves in cyber threat intelligence. And I have to know a whole lot of different things in order to be a cyber threat intelligence analyst. I need to know the basics about how networks works, about how security works, about how operating systems works. I need to be able to do analysis. I need critical thinking. I need to understand policies, laws, procedures, regulations, SOPs. I might need to know about risk management. I may do some level of traffic analysis. There might be, again, specific industry things that I need to know. Like if I work in finance, it might be different than if I work in aerospace, which might be different if I'm worried about SCADA or ICS systems, right? which threat actors do I concentrate on? Because there's probably too many to have super deep, in-depth technical knowledge of all of the state-sponsored or state-supported threat actors, depending on which terminology will get me thrown off Twitter today. How do we evaluate information sources? Which information sources do I trust? Do I understand the basics about malware? I might not be a malware analyst, but I should have a pretty reasonable understanding of how malware operates. Can I do pivoting? That's pretty critical. Do I understand geopolitical implications of how something that happens in the real world or in a specific geographic area might increase or decrease certain threat actors or threat activity? Can I actually communicate and write reports or give briefings? And on the right, you're not meant to necessarily read all of these knowledge, skills, and abilities or KSAs, but we're about to dive in to some KSAs. So there's a lot of things that some cyber threat intelligence analysts are going to have in common, and we're also going to talk about some areas of specialization within CTI as well. So to level set a little bit, we get this question all the time, like, what do I need to do to be a cyber threat intelligence analyst? So I really like the NICE cyber available. There's a link at the bottom of the slides. You could Google it, NICE cyber framework. So on the left is a all source cyber analyst. And I, in my own words, say this is sort of the less technical version of what a CTI analyst can look like. There's also a threat or warning analyst job with all of their KSAs. And I generally say that's a little bit more technical. And then there are clearly some cyber threat intelligence specialists or SMEs that are even more technical in some areas that they operate in on a daily basis as well. I always describe myself as a little bit less technical. But the knowledge, skills, and abilities to get started in this role require a baseline of knowledge about how IT systems operate, how networks operate. You probably need about a security plus level of understanding of cybersecurity. Maybe you don't need the cert. That's a whole nother topic. I think there's actually a panel on certs today. We can talk about that at the happy hour if you're there. I have very strong feelings about most things, including certifications. So you're also a cyber analyst. So less technical doesn't mean that there's less things that you need to bring to the table to perform this role. Do you understand communication? Can you actually write executive summaries that are going to inform the executives for what they need to know? Do you understand your customer? Can you give a briefing? If you were in the CTI workshop yesterday, Andy Piazza covered a lot of really important topics about all-source cyber analysts and threat warning analysts and some of the foundational skills. And that was a great class too. So if you missed it and he gives it again at some point, I highly recommend you jump into his class. It was basically like mini SANS 4, 5, 7, 8 on steroids with 3 Monster energy drinks. So there's a lot of KSAs necessary for this. But it's this next slide that I really am going to dig into because this is a CTI career talk, right? Because I get a lot of questions about careers and flexibility or lack of set career paths. And that is true. Cyber is a new field. We have been doing cybersecurity for maybe 20 years. Some people might say 25 years. So it's not like law. Law has been practiced for what, 2,500 years at this point, or philosophy, because philosophy has been practiced for a real long time, right? Cybersecurity is a new discipline for the human species. So everybody is still figuring this thing out. So I want to talk about different careers and different related specializations as it pertains to threat intel in some capacity. So you have your all source analyst, right? Do I understand geopolitical things? And like deeply, like if my company has assets or, in the Middle East, do I understand Middle East politics and how that might affect the threat picture that we are worried about as a company? Do I have briefing skills? Do I understand the applicable policies, laws, and regulations that affect my industry, that affect the industry where I am? Like, do we worry about, GDPR? Is that what it's called in Europe? Am I concerned about that? Do I do root cause analysis, critical thinking? And then there's OSINT Analyst, which is a whole specialization. There's a whole field of OSINT. Now, some CTI analysts are good at this. Do I understand, research, sock puppets, social media analysis, deep or dark web analysis, like actual deep web analysis, not what the vendors oftentimes say? Just kidding. Do I understand metadata analysis, harvesting data? Do I understand all the OSINT techniques? This is a specialization. Some all source analysts have these skills, but technically they're different specializations. And then you have your sort of like what traditionally is considered the core competencies of a cyber threat intelligence analyst, that threat/cyber analyst. Do I do some light PCAP analysis, still policies, laws, and procedures that are applicable to me in my industry and where I'm geographically working? Do I do some light malware analysis? I at least need to understand that. Definitely pivoting across IOCs and observables is a critical skill. Do I specialize in certain threat actor TTPs or certain geographic areas, right? Am I involved in tipping and queuing? Well, a lot of all of these things is also threat hunting. Some CTI analysts might do some light threat hunting, but I think threat hunting is its own pure specialized skill, right? So a lot of threat hunters will come from a world where they have done some of this other stuff. So do you know threat actor TTPs, right? We are in the network proactively looking for what we think might be a threat actor in the network that is so far been unidentified. So there's a lot of more technical knowledge needed to be a threat hunter. And then we have DFIR analysts. Well, how is this related? Well, a lot of the same skills that we've been talking about will be applicable if you move into a DFIR analyst role, a forensics analysis, registry analysis, event log analysis, probably more traffic and PCAP analysis. And at a more technical and deeper level, you need to understand the IR processes and evidentiary things, right? Even if you're not purely an IR person, right? We have this bucket. Are you doing artifact analysis? Right? Well, that has a lot of skills that are related to being a malware analyst. So now these are really specialized roles, right? So do you have a deep knowledge of multiple types of OSs? Do you do some scripting and programming and understand it so that when you're reversing the malware, you understand what the malware is doing, because you have to include that in your report? Do you understand assembly languages? Do you understand disassemblers like IDAPRO, packers, extractors, compilers? Can you do binary analysis? And do you have a deep technical understanding of what certain threat actors are doing with the malware? And then that's, some of this is related to the forensics analysts, who again can be very specialized. Do they understand the evidentiary rules and procedures and policies for the organization that you work at? You're probably going to do some application footprinting, data preservation, live imaging, probably some at least light malware discovery, maybe malware analysis, maybe traffic analysis, PCAP analysis, right? It could really depend. And basically everything that's listed in GCFA, you would have to know to be a good forensics analysis. And then somebody has to manage teams. So I'm going to spend a minute on this manager role here. So sub-managers are managing very specific teams, like this manager manages cyber threat intelligence people. This manager manages DFIR analysts. This manager manages the malware analysts and the malware shop. Some managers in our world manage multiple specializations, especially the further up the management tree you go, right? Your teams generally get larger, so you're now managing multiple types of specializations. So what does this person need to bring to the table? Well, industry-specific skills and knowledge, right? So it's not always directly transferable, right? Somebody who spent a really long time in DoD and goes to industry, they're going to have to learn some things about how that particular industry works, right? Some things will be transferable, but some things will not be transferable. So there's going to be different policies and laws and regulations, including like HR, legal, right? There's all the manager stuff we need to be concerned with. How does salaries work? How do I get people promoted? What if somebody's underperforming? This big concept of servant leadership, I think, is pretty critical. So if you haven't heard of that, you might want to look that up at some point. Probably some project and program management types of skills at this manager role. Are you good at mentoring folks? And then technical prowess. So in our industry, what we typically see, and I've experienced this on sort of both sides as a manager and a technician, if you will, is that if that manager doesn't have some level of technical understanding or technical prowess in the things that we are talking to them about, the team really loses credibility in that manager. That doesn't mean that if that person in a manager role is not a deep malware analyst, right? That's not their core focus. I don't necessarily need them to be able to do every aspect of the job that the malware analyst is doing. What we would expect is that they have an understanding of what is required for that role, so that when the malware analyst is talking to them about technical topics, they have an understanding, right? They appreciate what's being said at a technical level as to maybe why something is taking longer or why there's a technical glitch, right? Like maybe it comes down to, you're decrypting something, right? If the manager doesn't have any technical understanding or prowess in these aspects, it makes it very difficult for the team to trust the manager, and you're going to have a lot of communication and a lot of other issues. So I know management is a specific topic, but I wanted to spend some time discussing that aspect as well. If you are in this world of threat analysis, you can move specializations. It is very possible and often done that someone starts in one area and pivots through education, managing their career, networking in the industry, and moves into another specialization. And we're going to talk about that because you want it all, but that's not fair, right? So hopefully you guys appreciate my song lyrics. So I'm going to talk about traditional or nonlinear career paths, but realistically, there are no traditional career paths because cybersecurity has only existed maybe for 20 or 25 years, right? If you want to be a constitutional lawyer, we have very good guidance that we could give you. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, there's lots of other neurosurgeons that have come before you. If you want to be a philosopher, we know how that career field works. Right? If you want to be a malware ICS SCADA specialist, it's not like I can go to my local college and be like, oh yeah, I want to sign up for your master's program in SCADA ICS malware exploitation, right? Like you're going to have to do a lot of different things in order to get that level of knowledge. So this traditional path is achievable in CTI or other aspects of cybersecurity, right? You start off as an analyst, you're a junior level analyst, and you get promoted. So now you're, not quite the newbie anymore. And then you become a mid-level analyst and you know a lot more things and you help out and mentor some of the more junior people. And then you become a senior analyst and you get paid a bunch of money, hopefully, depending on where you work. And like you're really senior and, you're in charge of more projects and it's probably very stressful. And then maybe you step into that technical manager role. So now you're managing a team of analysts, right? And maybe it involves some hands-on, but probably less hands-on than you were as a senior analyst, right? It's more people management, but still being involved in the technical aspects. And then you sort of step out of a technical manager role to like a true manager role, right? So this means the team is probably bigger. And that can vary wildly. So maybe you have people on your team where you didn't used to do that kind of job. So you might have to learn, what does it take to do their job so that I can manage them? What sorts of training and education should I recommend for these people? How do I get the good people promoted so that we can keep the cycle going? And then eventually maybe you become like an ISO or a CISO, right? This is possible. This is a career path that people have taken. But it doesn't have to be. Your career could be like this. You could start off as an entry-level analyst and then a junior analyst and then a mid-level analyst and then a senior analyst and then the old SME in the corner who knows everything, but we don't talk to them before 10 a.m. because they haven't had 3 Monster Energy drinks yet, right? And you stay a SME your whole career, hands-on the whole career, never entering management. Now, like maybe you briefly enter management, you decide it wasn't for you, you pivot back into one of these like senior roles. There are people like this in the industry, right? There's plenty of them across different cybersecurity specializations. So I've seen people in CTI roles who, are 60 years old and are still writing CTI reports, right? There are forensic specialists who want to stay hands on keyboard the whole time, OffSec people, red teamers, right? There are people who don't want to be managers and they proactively ensure that through certain career choices, they have been able to both progress in seniority and salary, but stay a technical specialist. And there are absolutely lots of people in the industry who do this. Or you could do this. Different specializations across career. So you start out as an OSINT analyst and you get some experience and then you get some more training and education and you network and you manage your career and you become an all-source analyst or a less technical CTI person just starting out. And then after a couple of years in that role, you become a true CTI or threat warning analyst, and you're a little more technical and you've picked up some more tools in your toolkit. And then you become a mid-level CTI analyst, and now you really know a lot about CTI analysts for whichever industry or career area you specialize in, whether it's, as a vendor or in the government or out in private sector and industry. And then you decide, actually, the CTI thing's pretty cool, but I've done this for a while and I've done some light threat hunting, and the threat hunting team has an opening, so I'm going to become a threat hunter. So then you get some additional education, training, manage your career, work your network, you become a threat hunter. And then after a while, you become a DFIR specialist, and then you become a senior DFIR specialist. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I like doing forensics and I want to, help the forensics team out. And then you do that. And you never were a manager, and you never did the same thing for a long time either. People have careers like this. And it doesn't have to be those specializations either. Or your career could look like this. There are no rules in cybersecurity. The cake is a lie. You have to proactively manage your career in order to get what you want out of your career, because there are no traditional paths, right? You started off in sales, and then you were an EMT, and then I got my first entry-level IT help desk role, and then I became a junior security analyst, and then I did some more training and education and worked my network and volunteered at BSidesNoVA to meet some people who needed a junior pen tester, and then I got hired there. And then I decided I really like malware, and somebody was like, oh, I have this opening at this startup, but we need a malware analyst. So then you went there, and then they're like, oh my God, you're really good. You can talk to people and mentor them. Do you want to be a technical manager? And you said no, and they said, well, we'll give you $30,000 more. And then you said yes. And then you became a technical manager. And then you're like, I really hate this. This is terrible. I had to fire someone. You cried for a week, and you become a senior malware reverser, which also still means that you cry a lot, but in a different way. And then you're like, actually, what I want to do is be in charge of everybody and work with 7 people and my buddies. We start this company. So you become the CEO of a startup. And there are no rules in cybersecurity, but you have to proactively manage your career. I do also want to point out that there's this book called Range: Why Generals Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstein. I'm about halfway through it, but I actually describe my career much more in generalist terms than in specialization terms, because at some point we have to have personnel in cybersecurity that really do have a lot of knowledge, a lot about a lot of different specializations and areas, but they might not be deep technical experts in all of those areas. And I would say that currently I describe myself that way, but I'm proactively trying to manage my career to get to where I think I want to go, because I have to have a plan, but the plan can change. So get a mentor in the area of specialization you are working in or that you want to work in. You should have mentors that are both formal mentors, informal mentors. You should have maybe at least one mentor at the organization you work, and you should probably have at least one mentor outside of the organization or company you work with. All my advice comes with the "your mileage may vary" warning or sticker, right? So not only do I try to give advice based on my own personal career, but I also try to tailor the advice I'm giving to people based on other people's careers that I am, engaged with, my colleagues and associates and friends. Be proactive about your career planning, because your career planning can make your career unique to you. So when you see talks about this is how I got to where I am, that's all important information, but your career is different and unique, and you should manage it. There are no rules. So I will now take questions if there are some questions in the chat, and my moderator will help me because I do not see chat currently.
Yes, are there any questions? There are no questions right now. Let me check the chat again.
Sure.
All right, so there's a question in the chat, right? Arden wants to know the name of the book you mentioned. Again, it was in the previous
sure.
slide.
It's called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. That's on the second bullet on this slide. I went back.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
John, any other questions? Any other questions?
So if you are interested in CTI and you're in the audience today, there will be a panel later with several people on it. I will also be on that panel. It will be about cyber threat intel as well. We'll probably talk on some of the topics I talked about earlier in the presentation about, what does a day in the life of a threat analyst look like? And some of it will probably be industry specific.
Yeah, so there's another question or comments. So the term jack of all trades or master of none will be a successful strategy?
Yeah, it's actually that quote is longer. If someone Googles the quote for me, give me the whole quote because we've reduced the quote. So if you look up the whole quote, there's like a second phrase that gets cut off. So you have to look at it this way. Like, I don't like that theory about, a jack of all trades means you're a master of none. Because if you look at the sorts of complexity that's involved in cybersecurity, like, are you going to tell me that all the CISOs are absolutely specialists in like their cloud platform and all their SOC operations and their engineering team and their IR response team? Like, that person can't be an expert in everything. So they essentially have to be jacks of all trade, right? So the more you learn, and this is an industry where you continue to learn. Like, if I have a passing understanding of SCADA and ICS systems and I'm not an expert there, well, that is helpful. If I went to a job where I needed to know a lot about SCADA and ICS, well, then I would study and learn to become more of an expert. But I have some passing knowledge which lets me get by for most of the roles I have had so far in my career.
Right, so they were asking, right, the panel that you mentioned is CTI Careers, and that's coming up at 2:30 p.m.
Yep.
So there is an interesting question here. Let me see.
Okay.
Wait. What is the one thing you knew before embarking on a career in CTI?
So my background is in the intelligence community as a signals intelligence or SIGINT analyst. So for me, I knew I wanted to leverage the information and the background and stay, at least at that time, within the DoD world. And performing intelligence analysis is important. So the other aspect of that question is I am a really mission-driven individual. So while I was in the Army and as a CTI analyst, right, you're contributing to something much greater than just making money, which sounds weird to a lot of people in industry, but like I'm having a greater impact in terms of national defense and security of the nation. So for me, that's really important and has been throughout most of my career to have that broader impact.
All right, thank you, John. Any other questions? Any other questions, comments? Let me see. So there's a link that was shared by Ken Kono. And it's for Little Bobby, Sunday morning web comic on technology and security. Thank you.
Little Bobby drop tables, maybe?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
One last question. It will be, is the CTI fight at 2:30? Rest. It's going to be at 2:30. It's going to be a panel.
Right. So it's a panel. So I don't know. If this were in person, I would probably have to be dodging Rotten Tomatoes right now because a lot of CTI people will, I'll play devil's advocate with myself. No, every CTI person should be a threat hunter. That's a core skill. It's not threat hunting isn't a core skill of CTI. Like, there's a nice framework I can point to. Like, should you understand threat hunting and maybe do some light threat hunting? Yes. Threat hunting is its own specialization. So like, if you are a business or an organization that has threat hunters, that is its own job. And there will be people who disagree with me.
All right, one question here. What advice would you provide Intel cyber graduates? Is there a new
Intel cyber? First of all, feel free to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I can talk to that person. I'm happy to do that. Is that you have to understand cyber, right? So we can take sort of like the intelligence aspects and like, all the different analytic techniques and analysis of competing hypotheses and root cause analysis and structured analytic techniques and estimative language and probability with cyber security and understanding threats. The number one advice most new people don't get is don't be overwhelmed Like, you have to focus your training and education. Most new people in any specialization are overwhelmed by information. So the other thing is that Katie Nichols, who's going to be on the panel, by the way, and she just got Twitter verified, by the way, she has some great blogs about how to get started in cyber threat intel. So if you contact me, I can give you the link, or you can just Google Katie Nichols' blog about cyber threat intel. I'm sure it pops up.
All right, so I guess one last question. What if you have knowledge in a sector that does not traditionally have a cyber focus, but you want to get CTI focus in that area?
So if you don't have traditional focus, or you want to get CTI focus, so you can, there's so much stuff to read that comes out from the vendors, like the Verizon DBIR and on and on and on, right? There's so much information, and like anything Draco's posts about threat actors, or any of the other vendors. I'm not trying to be vendor specific here, but like there's so many CTI vendors, or like the stuff that comes out from like DHS or FBI that's publicly available, or TLP White. You can read all of that. There's also a couple of like really good podcasts to follow, so you know what's going on. You have to be on Twitter, even if it's a sock puppet account, even if you like put up a picture of a giraffe and your name is like, Bob Bubbles, like you have to be on Twitter. You have to be part of the community. And then to build up those skills, like, could you summarize, like Andy's workshop, can you summarize the DBIR in one page? Give me the highlights. Can you do that effectively? Like, there's things you can do to get those skills. Your first job will probably come through networking. So yeah, there's a couple panels that are competing. I think the panels are going to be recorded just like the talks. I know the workshops weren't recorded. I think the panels are going to be recorded. So is CTI Careers 2:30? I don't know when. I just go where they
It's
yell at me to
1:30.
be.
CTI Careers is at 2:30, and then certs versus no certs is at 1:30.
So there you go. That's
Yeah.
why we have moderators.
All right. So thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you so much, John.
All
It was a
right.
very interesting presentation. And so thank you all for attending. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, the rest of the sessions. Thank
All
you.
right. Have fun.
Bye bye.